The death of the Irani Cafes is a very organic process in its own right.
We are hopeful and we pray that it comes out.
In the 19th century, Zoroastrians were fleeing Iran to escape being persecuted or just for better economic opportunities. And many of them ended up settling in India, especially here in Mumbai.
Being a food loving community, they opened up Irani style cafes across the city, which gained widespread popularity.
The Irani restaurants are a phenomenon of the 19th century. Essentially, they were started by refugees who came to India as migrants in the middle of the 19th century. After the Parsis who'd been here for about 1200 years at that time started going back to Iran to what they called Mother Watan, to the motherland, and were quite surprised to find Zoroastrians still there. They told them essentially that India had been very good to them and that perhaps their fellow brethren who were still left in Iran and who were economically not very well off would come to India. So a lot of younger sons from the Iranian Zoroastrian families came down to India. They didn't have a lot of money. They were essentially bakers, and the culture of tea shops was a very, very old and respectable culture in Iran, as opposed to India, where it was a very fledgling thing.
These cafes are set up in a standard format: high ceilings, wooden chairs, wooden tables, and glass mirrors, while oozing a titillating whiff of bakery and serving classic Parsi dishes.
So they took to opening these tea shops, these cafes with bakeries attached, where bread was their mainstay, along with bakery products like biscuits and cakes and macaroons and things like that. And they added a lot of patties and pies and fried eggs. And they had a simple menu with a high turnover rate.
Through the decades, these cafes blended into the city's cultural and culinary landscape, endearing to people of all age groups. These cafes have long stood out from other eateries in the city, but given Mumbai's fiercely competitive food market, the Irani cafes are feeling the heat, and many of them are shutting up shops.
In the 1950s, there were about 350 such cafes, but today their numbers have plummeted down to just around 20, a damning indictment of the culture's slow but steady demise.
The death of the Irani cafes is a very organic process in its own right. It's not like all of a sudden, people stop going there or they lost their relevance. It happened over time. And there are only so many that the city can sustain. So what has happened over time, a lot of them have shut down, a lot of them have changed into Chinese restaurants, games parlors, beer bars, so on and so forth. They also did not reinvent themselves with the times. So those who have successfully reinvented themselves have done quite well. And there are some at locations which make a lot of sense, like Kayani at Metro and Kular and Company at Matunga, where location again is still very, very sensitive to the kind of clients that are coming into them.
Kyani & Co. is the oldest surviving Irani cafe in Mumbai, having been in operation for over 100 years. It's also unique for being one of the few Irani cafes which operates a restaurant and bakery under one roof.
Way back in 1904, a gentleman by the name of Khodamrat Marizban came down from Iran and started this restaurant. This is one of the very few vintage restaurants which has got a bakery with a restaurant attached. Most of the restaurants you will find are plain restaurants or will have an exclusive standalone bakery. It's not an easy job to run these type of cafes now. So not cost effective, and at the same time the generation, the upcoming generation, the second generation, the third generation are not much keen in doing this nature of business.
While Kyani's iconic legacy continues to attract customers, the COVID-19 pandemic have reduced their sales and things are getting admittedly tough.
We were doing quite well, I would not deny that. Prior to COVID, after COVID, there has been a drastic fall, drastic. And we have cut down our hours of business also. People are not yet confident, I would say, in short. People know how they are coming out, but their confidence level is still lacking.
Efforts are being made to revive the Irani cafe culture in the city. Soda Bottle Wala and Cafe Irani Chai are just two examples of new restaurants opened in the last few years that are aiming to reinvent one of Mumbai's most iconic cultural institutions.
We started this it was end of 2015 when we started this. Now the motivation behind starting it, it's, we've always been into it. This is the business we've always been in. My great grandfather came down working from Iran to India. It was around, say, 1880s when he came down walking from Iran to India. And what he started doing is that he started selling tea. And then, gradually he got a restaurant. There was a time where I believe Mumbai had around, say, 400 to 500 Iranian cafes in Mumbai. And then to this point where there are hardly 50. So my grandfather was always sad about this fact. And I remember my father telling him that, he'll again put up something. So yeah, after say around 50 years, an Iranian came up again with an Iranian cafe. Difference is just the time. You get my point? Just that after a gap, we again started this.
While these new outlets offer a reinvention of the Irani cafe experience, the traditional outlets remain the paradigm for the locals here, and they hope that the culture remains intact even going forward.
These type of restaurants have turned into common rooms and beer bars, which are more lucrative and more profit making than these type of restaurants. So the shift has been primarily because of that. Really do hope not that this situation arises where Irani cafes then become history. I would like these restaurants to continue. If the next generation comes, I would like them to continue. We want to make certain changes. I have no issues. I've always told my family members that they can come and experiment. But there are certain norms, certain goalposts within which they have to function.
The heyday of the Irani might be gone, but the Irani restaurant hasn't really vanished. In fact, surprisingly, there are a couple that have opened up anew in Pune, and there is one that has opened up in Mahim, which calls itself Cafe Irani Chai. So there is hope that this kind of a model and this kind of food and this kind of decor, which is very reminiscent to people of times past, of happier times, will keep reinventing itself. So as long as that happens, I suppose the Irani Cafe will always be part and parcel of our lives.